All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 16th, 2024 meeting of the Brook Township Land Preservation Committee. I think we have a record crowd here tonight. Thank you all for coming. Scott is going to have us on YouTube here in a bit. The Zoom, I don't know what's up with that, but it doesn't feel like showing a picture. The camera doesn't feel like looking at the room. The microphones might be working, so if anybody's out there on Zoom, we won't be able to hear them anyway, so good luck to them. All right, so the meeting is beginning. First item of business is to review the minutes from our previous meeting, which was held on January 16th, 2024. We only meet once a quarter at this point. Well, so let's take a look at those and we'll note any additions, corrections, otherwise, and decide whether or not to approve. I didn't say anything, we should probably unmute the microphone so we show up there on YouTube. Which one? Yeah, I think that we could have to do that or that. You have more microphones and chairs. That's what I mean. Yeah. It's red. Yeah, with the red, it's light lit up, then it's hot. Questions, concerns? Any questions, concerns, or corrections on the January minutes? And is there a motion to approve? And I hear a second. Second. Thank you. And all in favor of approving minutes, say aye. Aye. Okay. Minutes are approved. Well, that brings us up to the open forum on action items. Since there are so many of us here tonight, the microphones are working. If you've got anything you'd like to add or ask, please come up to the microphone in the center so that everybody can hear out there and everywhere. Go ahead.
Aaron Allen, 1025 White Road. Looking at the 2023 projects, the second parcel, I was looking that up. Is that 415 Chestnut Tree Road? Is that the street address for that one?
I am not sure. We have maps. Second one. Who's got the pictures we can feed? There we go. That does appear to be right at the corner of Chestnut Tree and Township Line. Here's the map.
Yeah.
You want to see?
So that is not Hamilton Township. That's West Hamilton Township. That's Township Line Road.
Yeah, that would be the one, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that property is not Huntingburg Township. It might be a Huntingburg address, but it's West Hamilton.
Well,
So I don't know.
That,
We might not need to
that's a
talk
great
about
point
that
about
one.
that one. Yeah.
As well as the third one on that list, two of those parcels are not Huntingburg Township. They are also West Hamilton
The third one?
Yes.
Now those, I think the ones we're considering are all
There's
on our
five,
side.
they're not. Two of them, those two are not, Iowa Township, or Western County.
The corner of Honeybrook Township's up past Chestnut Street.
There's a weird job, and I'll pull it up, I'll show it to you.
Okay.
If you go to Jessica Views, and click on them, it says West, for some reason, West
It
Hampton
doesn't
Township,
follow
Johnson,
the road.
those two parcels. Yeah, so I'm just bringing that to your attention.
Okay.
But as far as I know, those two are not in Honeybrook Township, and neither is the second one.
There's 3614, which was farthest at one point, is on the other side of Chestnut Tree Road.
Yeah, it's
And that's
14.1 and
separate.
14.1A.
Those two. Okay.
You can look at
Oh,
Jessica
no.
Views and you'll see, for some reason, it takes a weird step in there. It's right. Where is it?
That would be right there.
See how it drops in there?
Yep.
That's the parcels. Here, Honeybrook Township.
Okay.
And then the last thing, number 5, I don't know if you're aware, but that property is actually going to auction in a couple days.
I was wondering about that.
So I wasn't sure
I
if
was-
they put in the application a while ago and then decided to list their property.
I think with that, they are looking to see whether or not this committee thought that the property was preservable, so that that could be something that they mention at the auction, or something that would potentially be a value add for whoever's buying it. It's like, yeah, you can buy this, you can preserve it, so
Yeah.
bid it up higher, I think.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Mary. Yeah, we did get all these from Chester County. Yep. And they are all in Chester County, so they qualify for the dam program.
From Jeff,
Yeah.
you're gonna contact me.
Yep. All right, anybody else?
My name is Kevin Doherty, Brook Township, and my question to the board is, or my comment is, has the board ever thought about using the land preservation as a way to obtain park space for the township?
It's something that has never been, I guess, formally proposed or considered. It is something that is a possible use for the funds. If the right location was identified, then that would be something we could do. Based on things I've heard from people in the community over the years, especially if it was a property that was at risk of development, there would be even more of a desire for us to purchase that property to prevent that.
Right.
Do
And I
you
know,
have,
I'm sorry,
do you have a place in mind?
70 feet high. But, you know, as a community of 8,000, 9,000 citizens, most people don't have farms, most people are, you know, single-family dwellings. And we're woefully under the, in the comprehensive plan, it admits that we are below space. We have 11 acres, of which 8 of them are baseball fields. So we basically have 1 acre, 2 acres, one tot lot, and for 9,000 people. And right so far, that's what we have. And I can do a little bit more digging to check it with some more facts at the next meeting. But thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, now we'll move along. So we've got 5 applicants before us today. This has been brought up to us earlier. On the sheet I've got here, I've labeled them A, B, C, D, and E. We'll all have a copy of that sheet up here. And so there's a certain level of confidentiality we're supposed to maintain about who's applying, what the numbers are involved with that, etc. So since this is going out to the internet and everything else, we're just going to refer to the different properties by their letter and amount of acreage. Should we just go down the list? Starting with A. A is approximately 25 acres. And that one's, I only printed out one copy of all the pictures. We've got satellite pictures of like aerial pictures that show the borders, soil qualities, and where they're located in the township. So property A is 25 acres at the intersection of Todd Road and Clinton County Road, just outside the borough, across from what used to be Miller Trucking. There's a stream running through the center of it. I don't see cows out there. It's definitely actively farmed. Looks to be mostly class 2 soils with a bit of class 3 and some class 4. So definitely a wet spot in the middle. Yeah, pretty good property.
Also, there's adjacent east line.
Let's see. Yep. Yeah, this is adjacent to East Land. It's already preserved on the other side of Todd Road, and then facing away from the. Yep. Yeah, so that'll continue to build up that block right outside the borough. And, yep. Any questions or concerns about that? All right. I figure we'll go down, just take a quick look at each one and the details of it. And then at the end, we'll just make one big giant resolution to send up to the supervisors. That's what we've done in the past. So B, we'll skip over because it seems to be outside just over the line. Yeah, so there's the border. That's West Nate Mill, I believe. to C. C is a number of separate parcels, all adjacent, right along Chestnut Tree Road, kind of behind the old development there. And right behind the wet patch of woods where they were thinking about building townhouses not long ago, and luckily aren't. C, I don't have the individual acreage for the individual parcels. But all 5 parcels together would have been 41 acres. It looks like I would estimate about 2/3 of what's there is in Brook Township.
These two
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then that chunk.
the 5 and the 7 acres. It's these two right here.
Yep. Okay, so it's 5.3 and 7. And 7.7? 7.7. Yeah, that's the math easier. So minus 13 acres. Thanks. So that leaves us with 20 acres of preservable land inside Brook Township. This is mostly class 2 and can't really distinguish the blue. But the parts of Brook Township are mostly class 2 soils and class 7, which are fairly wet. And that roughly follows the wood line. Typical Brook fashion, anything that can't be plowed, probably swamp. Any further questions or comments or concerns about that? You know, this one.
You will update the spreadsheet when you talk to Jeff for the next.
Yep. Yeah. We could probably make a couple more calculations here about recommendation. All right, let's move on to D, which is two parcels off King Road, so moving over to the western part of the township. Yeah, this is your neighborhood, Chip.
Yeah, some of the greenhouses.
Also adjacent to preserved lands.
Just there you go.
40 acres in total. So this had a stretch of pretty big swath of class 1 soil, and then mostly class 2 and class 3 from there, a little bit of class 4. That's it. Yeah. Well, this one just didn't come with a key on it. So, presuming the color
Oh,
comes
I
with
see.
it. Yeah. So it looks like. I'll bring over card next time. All right, any questions or concerns about that? Looks like it meets the usual criteria. All right, and last but not least, E. It's right along Fieldstone Road. Okay. And up on the hill, adjacent to the chunk of preserved properties.
I think that here.
Yeah. There. So that parcel contains some of the headwaters of the west branch of Brandywine. It's going to start right there.
This is preserved.
Yep. Yeah. Backs up to a whole lot of easements. Downhill from the quarry. It's like mostly class 2 and class 3 soils. It's swamp in class 4. On the west side there by the stream. 2 ponds. Proposing letting out our own farm complex there in the middle, but keeping the ponds in the easement. And 42 acres total on that one. And from the sounds of things, the people that might be coming more to finalize the deal aren't the ones who are starting it. What questions or concerns or anything to note about that? I think that leaves us with a balance of 135 acres, 165 for consideration today.
Are the money available?
I asked John Goodall about that, and there isn't right now. I guess those programs are not up and running yet, or? So the proposal shows the county at 55% of covering the costs of the township at 45%. Whatever. Well, yes, the 5 year.
Yes, I would be, with 135 acres at 5,100, instead of 5,500. And then
thought we increased it. It's on the old spreadsheets. According to John Bill.
Sure, maybe?
No.
So,
I think it was higher than that.
Well, if we increase that to $6,500 per acre, our share would go from 334 to 294.
$394?
394, 875.
Let's grab that for the 85.
The closing fee was 7,000, we increased it to 9,000. Why don't you check with Goodall and call and see what his estimate is for that? He's the one that usually does this.
Any other questions, comments, motions, approvals?
You want to summarize this for the audience, so they know what we're talking about?
That's a good point. So we've adjusted our table here is what we're looking at, and we're left with a total of 135 acres within Honeybrook Township. In the past, we've used a cost of establishing an easement of about $5,500 per acre. As land values have been going up lately, thinking it might make sense to estimate at $6,500 an acre. We did talk about that back in January. And at $6,500 an acre, cost of preserving those 4 farms, or the portions of those 4 farms that are within Honeybrook Township, would be $395,000. Or, as we usually like to do it, whenever possible, spread that out into 5 payments over 5 years, which would put the cost at $80,000 per year. And in the past, sometimes we've made a recommendation to the township supervisors of preserving a number of parcels that we would enumerate in the motion at a cost not to exceed our given estimate. And then that resolution passed along to the supervisors if approved. The supervisors would then vote on it in their meeting to decide whether or not they
7,000 an acre, and we already moved at 6,500. What are we gonna do?
One thirty-five times 7,000, times 45% is 4.5250. So if you want to make the motion, not to exceed 4.5, that will probably go up to 40,000. Now, he comes back and says $8,000, $10,000 an acre.
Yep, yeah, well, I think as far as I know, none of the appraisals have actually been done yet for these. So,
Oh, we just could be overrated, we have to have a special meeting. Let's go 7,000 an acre, not to exceed. And if it's more than that, we have to get together and redo it. Sounds good. And closing fees, we were talking about those before. Should we include those? That's $9,000 one time. Yeah.
all right. Oh, how's our math work out then?
I just, let's say, maximum closing fee per property not to exceed $9,000 one time. And maximum,
So is this reading here? What is that considered?
they include one.
Yeah, it's our one transaction, right? Or, you propose a motion?
So a motion would look something like, we recommend that the supervisors support the preservation of 4 farms with parcels, and list of parcel IDs that all fall within the Brook Township, totaling 135 acres at a purchase cost not to exceed blank and closing costs not to exceed $9,000 per farm. What do we think for a blank?
No, 7,000 an acre came to 425.
How much?
425.
I'm sorry, I can't hear the deliberation. Can you guys speak up, please?
Yep, we're considering a recommendation for purchasing the farms at a cost not to exceed $425,000. Given that costs have likely gone up and planning to hopefully save time and not have to come back and ask again should something come back high.
And that's assuming an appraised value at $7,000 an acre for 135 acres, and assuming that Honeybrook Township is assuming 45% of the cost of that purchase. That's how it got to the 425.
In the past, the final costs come back lower often. We try to be I guess a little bit pessimistic.
Shane, they still have to like net out buildings and things like that for those parcels, correct? I mean, you're looking at,
On the maps shown for some of these, the exclusion areas were already kind of noted on there. So I think they may have, yeah. Yep. I believe they've already noted those out.
I'm not sure about that.
Might be.
I mean, if you look at Jesco views of that parcel on the Stone Road, it's 41.95 acres total.
Okay.
So I assume that doesn't net out any buildings or anything. Likely you're gonna be less than that.
Okay. So that would reduce the cost even further.
And that's why we're writing it as not to exceed, so
Yeah.
if it's less than that.
But if it's less than that, then it's less than that. Great. We hope it will be less than that. If it's more than that, well, we're trying to have it high enough, but it won't be more than that. So we don't have to come back and go through the process again and ask the supervisors to raise the limit.
But these all have to be appraised yet, so
Yep.
that's another variable. The acreage stated here is just an estimate anyhow.
Yeah, it's a maximum
Yep.
amount. It's,
Yep. Yeah, this was kind of early on in the let's make a deal process. Like, all right, we're figuring out, we're all playing poker, who's in, who's out.
So, should you start at 5,500 and you want to 7, or you want to 9?
7,000, yeah, the other consideration there that was the 9,000 was the closing costs involved in each deal.
So it's at 7? That's what you're...
7,000 an acre is the number we're using for the estimate right now, which is hopefully pretty generous. That's not, and that does not constitute an offer also. We're in no way saying, we'll give you $7,000 an acre. The way the process goes, the appraisal kind of sets the price of the per acre for the farm. They will kind of appraise the total value of the land, figure out what it would be worth selling for development versus selling it for farm, and then the difference between those two works out to the easement value per acre. And that's what the number that would be used to make an offer to purchase those development rights and create the conservation easement.
And who completes the appraisal?
It's usually a third-party appraiser
Picked by?
picked by the county or the conservancy or the, yes, typically one of them. And it's just a standard real estate appraisal. When they come in, they'll look things over, find comparable properties, just like if you were selling a house or buying a house. It's the same kind of story.
It's also based on the soil.
Yep.
And-
Yeah.
And if it's forested, that all is part of the evaluation.
Yep. Yeah, lands that are like top quality soils would be like, the more farmable it is, the more valuable it would be to preserve it. If it's a place like mine, it's largely swamp, then that lowers the value of it.
Does the state, when's the last time the state has given us funding for preservation?
The state funding actually comes through the county. That's why the current deal looks like 55% from the county. That's technically, I think, a combination of state and county funds.
Because on their spreadsheet, they have a separate, they have the county share, federal share, state share, and municipal share. Doesn't look like the state.
Which spreadsheet?
From the Chester Land Conservation, of all the parcels that they preserved since February 2023.
But not,
Okay.
not
It
every
is-
parcel gets state and federal.
That's what I'm saying, I'm just wondering
Yeah.
how you get the state to kick in, like, is that the county goes to the state? Because I just saw a big thing where the state is preserving a bunch of farms in Middlewood, and Lakewood Township, and I was just curious how you go after that state funding.
Yeah, it's the county usually gets backing from the state. And township in the past has managed to secure some additional funding through the Brandywine Conservancy. They've found a lot of money for us over the years, and through most of the 20 teens, they would find kind of a matching grant for all of the township money for us in between now and the closure. So that's another consideration that could bring our final cost down.
Yeah, we've received funding from the city of Wilmington because we're the headwaters of Brandywine, which flows into their water source. And so by having cleaner water from here that flows down into Wilmington, that's less money they have to pay in filtration and treatment to keep the water drinkable. So they've contributed money, Pew Charitable Trust has put money into this, a few other,
William Penn Foundation.
Wilmington Foundation. So there's money in addition to
So it's possible you could see more money coming from other sources
Yeah.
later on, is what you're saying?
Yep.
well, there's
I'm
already
not
been
gonna-
money from some of those sources, but
Yeah.
the success of our program has led to more funding over time.
No, I just mean in regards to these specific parcels, there could be additional funding.
There could be additional funding that comes in. It is not guaranteed, but it is possible. I was asking John Goodall from the Conservancy about that earlier today. Those conversations with those funding sources haven't happened yet. But yeah, for a number of past deals, the final deal has been $1 of township tax money and $3 has come from other sources. Questions? Go ahead.
Who spearheads this? Is it the county or
The applications
who
typically,
gathers all the data and puts it all together and, seeks the other funds? It's not you guys, right? It's,
no, the application process is usually shepherded through by either Chester County or the Brandywine Conservancy. Both of whom have dedicated staff for that kind of work. Usually, somebody from one of those two groups come to these meetings as well. Tonight, they're both busy.
emailed me all the collateral, so. yeah. Don't have somebody right at the end to bounce questions on. All right, so Jeff says that 5,500 is the countywide average that he's been using. And it says, sorry about the second farm, I don't know how it is.
Do you want to revise your estimate, or do you want to stay with the 7? Either way, it's conservative, and it's not going to be the actual number, it's going to change based on the appraisals.
Yeah.
I think what is. If the total on something, 300,000, it's at 425.
Yep. All right. Oh, should I read through that one more time? And then we'll decide what to do. So the committee recommends that the supervisors support the preservation of 4 farms with parcels of numbers to be copied over. Only those in Tony Brook Township, totaling 135 acres. Total purchase cost not to exceed $425,000. Total word in there. And closing costs not to exceed $9,000 per farm.
We'll put approximate acreage, because that's going to change also.
Okay. Noted. Any adjustments, changes, or somebody wants to propose to move forward with that?
Move that we move forward with that.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Hearing consent. That's that item. I think we skipped over the financial review also. We should look at that. We did not get an update of our usual spreadsheet. What's that? You got one?
Turn back.
Is that-
This is good.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we don't have a number yet.
But they said they weren't going to do it.
So we
You
have
know how to use that spreadsheet.
I guess
treasurer's report.
It's lasted how many years?
Oh.
Yeah.
Everybody
Search this one, right? I get it.
Okay.
Yeah. It makes sense to us, but yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not an accountant, so
I don't know if I.
it makes sense to non-accountants. And the report we do have is what makes sense to accountants, I suppose. So if I read that right, the fund balance is I'm gonna make a guess at whether or not I'm reading that right. Okay, so we got a page for January 31st, a page for February 29th, and a page for March 31st. should have been.
These are debits and credits, that's all they've done here. In order to do projections based on future outlays.
Yep.
The old spreadsheet.
Yeah. Yeah, we just have actual stuff, we got this, I think.
I think this is nice, but it doesn't project into the future what we're committed to spend. That's the only thing.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can get these at the end of every month. You know, for being, press back in the service and maintain sheet with projections.
Well, the problem is, you need more data than that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this,
You need this data.
Yep.
And unless they give it to you, you can't do the spreadsheet.
Yep.
Why don't you talk to Warren and see what it is that's going on? Does that make sense? Explaining to the audience, we used to have a spreadsheet that projected expenditures and receipts. And the balance of our land preservation account going forward spread over the next, it's 5 or 6 years. So we knew exactly where the expenditures were and what we committed to based on the balances. What the township just did is redid the format, and now they just have debits and credits with no forecast or projections going forward into the future, so we can have a bird's eye view of what's happening with the balances. So we all understand this, and apparently they have a new treasurer or somebody else doing it. She didn't understand this, so she redid it, and now we lost our projections. So we're going to query the township to see if they can possibly go back to the old spreadsheet that we all understand.
Are there still properties that you're making payments on?
Yes?
How much are you still?
I don't, they're projected in the future, and we haven't, I don't think we've outlaid anything currently against those commitments. I don't know why they haven't.
Is there like 20 properties that we're paying on, or is
No.
it like 2? It should be that hard to
On
keep
the
track of.
spreadsheet,
It says here in the agenda that in January 2025, there was only one payment due to a farm. At present, no, I'm sorry, at present, there's only one payment due to a farm.
Yeah, too, but what about the future?
Well, I was just saying that, you know, at one time where we were adding properties multiple times a year over several years, this spreadsheet was very helpful in keeping track of what was coming in and going out every month or every quarter. And right now, because of the pandemic, things slowed down considerably, we don't have near as many properties as we had
in the
4
back.
or 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, is how many properties you still owe money
So
on?
they're still on the books as far as I know.
Yeah.
For
Those,
these-
I would think that, yeah. Those were potential, but,
That one I thought did submit it.
is there somewhere?
Those are submitted, but
Yeah,
this
they
doesn't
show
show
that.
that close.
Yeah, yes, this was the last one. Just the parcel off Beaver Dam, or the group of parcels off Beaver Dam Road from last year.
Oh,
That wasn't a big chunk.
the
Yeah,
wood,
the wood lots.
yeah, we never,
That wasn't a big chunk, but that's not any of our information we have today.
we never committed to that, did we?
I thought I did.
Did we?
Yeah, I think we did.
It was based on an appraisal, which we never saw.
We haven't seen that.
They were supposed to get an appraisal.
We did a conditional recommendation.
Yeah, and so we haven't seen anything back.
As long as,
So we wouldn't have acted on any numbers until we got provided the appraisal.
well, we made kind of a conditional recommendation, where we said, as long as these factors remain true about this lot,
Did the township act on it? The supervisor? The one in
State form.
Yeah.
yeah, right next to the state forest. I thought that was all approved all the way up.
So that's in the back.
Yeah. So that's something that should be a projection that's factored into that sheet.
So this has to be updated.
Yeah. So,
So you gotta check with Lauren and see if
Yep.
the reason we have this spreadsheet and the new ones don't go into future commitments.
anything else under that one? And that brings us along to updating our conservation plan. And, good evening. I gather you guys are from the Conservancy?
Yes, we are. Unfortunately, we're from the municipal assistance community services side, so we couldn't speak to any of your questions regarding the land preservation side of things and fundings and so forth. But, yeah, we just wanted to talk to you as a committee to kickstart this project, see what elements we might be able to add to the plan. But I will introduce myself. If I have some questions for you all too, just to kind of get an idea of who you are as a committee and what the makeup is, but I'll introduce myself first. I'm Sarah Sharp, a lead planner with municipal assistance at the Conservancy. I'll be spearheading this particular plan update, but I'll be assisted by Liv Falcone, also with municipal assistance, and Lisa Timbers, who she does a lot of BMP work up in Honeybrook. So we wanted to bring in that side of the work going on in Honeybrook, since land preservation and then farm implementing best management practices on preserved farm, they kind of go hand in hand to try to strategize how, we have boots on the ground on an unprotected farm, but we're implementing BMPs. How might we be able to leverage that into a conversation about land preservation, and then vice versa? So just trying to fold that element in, but for all, I'm on my open space committee in Chad's Ford, and we never have an audience, so I wasn't
This is a new
anticipating.
thing for us.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we've heard, yeah.
So I can give a little overview of what the land preservation plan is. So far, I think this will be either the fourth plan, third update, or third, or fifth. Is it the second, the third plan, second update? Okay. So the land preservation plan basically looks at Honeybrook as a whole and identifies key parcels based on, typically we use the criteria that grant funders or the county uses to select properties to fund the preservation. That way we're proposing and prioritizing properties that can get grant funding. But it's a comprehensive look at the township, priority properties for preservation in the township. This process will also look at kind of the open space balance and you know, how funds have been leveraged over the years. I think the last update, it might have been published 2018, so just prior to the pandemic. So we'll have to take into consideration that, but it's kind of a 5-year status update on what the township has accomplished, how funds have been leveraged, how funds have been matched. As part of this, the board also approved an update to the cost of community services analysis, which I don't think was done in the last plan, but it might have been done with the first plan, but that basically looks at, it's kind of a checkbook balance. Similar to the appraisal, what would it cost the community in terms of services, tax increases to cover additional school children coming into the community with new development, or road maintenance? You know, the cost of development to the community versus the cost of preservation. In all of the analysis we've run, we find that your dollars for preservation go much farther than if a new residential development comes in, because typically the amount of taxes you receive from that residential development don't offset the cost of services that are required by that new residential development. So we'll just do an update to that as part of this plan. And then the Board of Supervisors was interested in doing, kind of looking at a parcel level, or maybe we identify a couple parcels, and look at the by right zoning, doing a build-out analysis, and then doing kind of a parcel-based cost of community services to really drive home, which we can discuss later, the details of that once we get a little bit more into the plan. But that was done for a high priority property in Westtown Township called Cravelly Farm. And there was a proposed development on that property, and then there was a huge surgence of wanting to preserve that property. So we took a look specifically at that property and did that same balancing act of what it would cost to preserve it versus what it would cost in terms of the development of that property. So that's kind of just broad overview. I didn't get the packets out to be included in your packets tonight, but I have some initial updated maps, just updating the previous plan, and then this is just the proposal, which kind of goes through the scope. You can disregard the first, intro letter. And then I have some more if people want to pick them up. But it was really, that was an update of, I'll take one for myself actually. An update of the maps that were in the last plan, taking into consideration, basically we updated the parcel lines and the protected lands layer to capture any new protected lands. Whenever we throw protected lands on here, there's always, we always find out from the community that there are additional protected lands. One thing that we might want to consider in light of conversations tonight This plan will take place over the course of 12 months is the timeline. So if there are any properties that are likely to be preserved within that time frame, or any properties, even if we don't want them publicly listed as pending preservation, but properties that we just want to keep in the back of our head that, you know, they're in the pipeline for preservation. They might not be priority properties moving forward, assuming the preservation falls in place. So that's just my quick spiel. But as a project team, we would love to get to know the Land Preservation Committee. I know your names are listed on your plaques, but if you could just introduce yourself, you know, how long you've been serving on the Land Preservation Committee, what kind of brings you to the Land Preservation Committee, if you happen to have preserved land, whatever you'd like to share with the team, just so we can kind of, I know I've worked with John Goodall for a while, so I have been picking his brain as well, just like you all pick his brain. But yeah, I would love to learn a little bit about you all. So I guess starting with
Sure,
Chip.
I'll go
Yeah.
first. My name is Chip Jones, and I've been on land preservation going on, I think it's 15 years. And the reason I'm on the committee is not because I own a farm, but I came from an area that was called Buckingham Township. I don't know if you know the township. And it's west of here. But the area started out as rural, and the supervisors did not allow the land to be subdivided. They didn't allow development of the land, and they thought they could get away with that. And then there were suits brought, class action suits, from at least 10 developers. Went to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, ruled against the township, and the cure was that they had to allow that township, Buckingham Township, to double the population within 10 years. So as a result, it started to grow townhouses and apartments and all, and I was living right in the middle of this. So I decided that I'm from the country, I'm a rural boy. Can't live that way. Too much traffic, too much congestion. So we decided, we found Honeybrook Township. In fact, we moved here 20 years ago, 22 years ago. And it was rural and nice, and I made a commitment that I was going to preserve it as best I could. So I signed up for the Land Preservation Committee, and here I am today.
Well, congratulations on 15 years. That's incredible. Shane.
Shane Haddon. I have always lived in Honeybrook Township, in the same place. It was a farm my grandparents bought back in 1971 to basically escape the buildup of Delaware County. Prior to moving up here, that branch of the family lived in Delaware County for probably 300 years, if not a little bit more. And that farm just got smaller and smaller and more encroached on by development, and that wasn't how they wanted to live, so they moved out here. Over my lifetime, I have seen just amazing amounts of development in this township. I've seen the population quadruple. I've seen the traffic's gotten so much worse. It's just gotten louder. And in the 90s, it really looked like it was on a projected course to become just a complete suburb. So I was very excited in 2005 when we had the referendum to start actively preserving land in this township, because I knew where it was going to wind up, and I really didn't want to move the same way my grandparents did. I like it here. I like the way it was. When came to purchase the farm from my grandmother after my grandfather passed away. It was shortly after that, I started looking into preservation and came up here to a meeting in 2012. They have made sure I came back to every meeting since then, and I did get my farm preserved. It's just a little spot, mostly swamp, as I mentioned earlier, but it's a nice little place. And my son is, now that it's preserved, and it's a place my son's hoping to take over someday. And we'll try to keep it in the farm for yet another generation, or keep it in the family for yet another generation. Yeah, so that's kind of my story.
Yeah. They kept you on that committee. That's how they
Yeah,
get you.
it's dangerous to show up here in the audience.
Yeah.
You want to get drafted.
Thank you.
I'm Susan Lacey. I've been living in Honeybrook for about 20 years. I started working with the Planning Commission in 2010, so this is my 15th year on the Planning Commission. And my professional interests overlay my community interests. I started working with land preservation probably about 11 to 12 years ago. It hasn't been quite as long as the Planning Commission. On the professional side, I have 2 degrees in forestry, and I spent 18 years working with the USDA Forest Service, starting out in landowner assistance programs, moving on to managing money, and then higher levels of executive management. But part of the reason that my husband and I moved, I also grew up in Delaware County, and have not been back since I was 17 years old. But we wanted a place where we could see stars and cows and sheep. We don't own enough land. We just have a 1.5 acre housing lot, but I get to enjoy other people's sheep and cows and horses. And I think preservation is really important here in Honeybrook. I mean, every time I look at the mission and the vision for our township, I take that seriously. So I'm trying to do my part to help maintain that rural way of life.
Great. It's funny you bring up Delaware County. Both Liv and I are from Delaware County, and Lisa's from Delaware, so we understand when you talk about suburban sprawl, and it's definitely a breath of fresh air driving up here.
I was in one of the inner suburbs, where I mean, like 5 minutes to
Okay. I can barely claim Delaware County. I'm in Chadsport, so
She likes to say she's not really in.
yeah. But yeah, thank you.
I'm Mike Zook. I have a farm north of town here. I'm not even sure how long I've been with this board. I'd say 7 or 8 years. I'm
Longer than me, I think. I think all of you were here when I got here.
yeah, because I'm not sure when I started.
Wandered in, they didn't let you leave.
I guess I was, well, there's another fellow out here, John R. Stolstreet. He kind of asked me if I'd be interested in it, and I always had a kind of a passion for open. Well, I'm in Zook Molasses is out here, what we call Zook Molasses. That was started by my grandfather's brother. At that time, he had hammer mills where they'd grind feed for farms. We had 3 hammer mills going east full time, down Chad's Ford, whatever's east of here. Now that has all went up. Most of that has all been developed. And I was always, how can we keep that there? How can we keep that there? How can we? I was always had an interest in preserving Honeybrook because it's good ground. It's. I guess when I was asked to be involved here, I was sure I should. I was we need smarter guys like these, to keep it quiet. Come on, I'm just a farmer that doesn't know a whole lot.
Not true.
You know more than me about farming, that's for sure.
Very specialized knowledge.
So yeah, like I say, we need houses, we need places to live, but do we need to build these houses on good ground? Like in this area, we have ground out west. I mean, people do that, but they have to irrigate. In this area, it's almost, well, produce farmers irrigate, but for me, I don't have to irrigate my crops. Some years it might really dry, but you can almost be guaranteed a crop. And I think maybe shouldn't say that this year, not like a crop. It's just it's a nice area. And I hate to see, well, I was always concerned, like the farms in this area, if we stick a development in the middle of, say, these farms, it's not gonna stop. It's like I shouldn't call it a disease, but it could ruin it for the rest of us. So I just have a passion to do what I can to keep my rural, and that's where I'm at, I guess.
Great, well, thank you. It's always just helpful to hear your perspectives, what brought you here, what your priorities are, both individually and as a township. It is funny because we're a bunch of suburban girls coming out here, but we have that same goal of preservation and preserving that agricultural lands. Everybody needs to eat and everybody needs that food grown somewhere. So that's super important. Getting into the land preservation program here in Honeybrook, just wanted to, and it was super helpful kind of being, we usually like being at the top of the agenda so we can sneak out at the back, but it was really helpful to hear your dialogue. Some of my questions were already answered, like what were some of the challenges over the last 5 years in preservation. And you mentioned the pandemic really slowed things down in terms of that. Some of the successes of the program you already mentioned about leveraging funds and working on stretching your dollar further and those partnerships working together to preserve the land. But I wanted to know if there are any other things that make your program successful or any challenges you might see in preserving additional land in Honeybrook. I know you've crossed a huge threshold with over 30% of the township, so maybe some of those low-hanging fruit have already been picked, but I don't know if you had any insights on those successes and those challenges.
Well, I think one of the big successes of our program has been John Little. I think the energy and the knowledge and the passion he's brought to the program, as well as his willingness to travel all the way up here, knock on doors, sit down with landowners and farmers, and just talk to them about the benefits of the program or potential benefits to the program to them as an individual farmer or landowner. And I just think John is just such a treasure to this program. I don't think, if he hadn't put all the effort that he did into this, we would have been quite as successful. But also his knowledge and connections of some of these other organizations that we were able to link or create a partnership with on the money side. And in his travels of going out and talking about programs, maybe not just in Honeybrook, but in other parts of Chester County that have been successful. And for people that are running the Pew Charitable Trust in Philadelphia, I'm not sure before this program they'd never even heard of Honeybrook, but they've been out here and they've been very impressed with what they saw and wanting to put more money into it.
We certainly wish we could duplicate John Goodall because we would be more successful.
He knows everyone and everything.
I don't get it. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think you mentioned low-hanging fruit, and I think over the years that we've been doing this, we've captured a lot of the low-hanging fruit, and the big challenge for us going forward is to get some of that higher fruit that's available, and that's persuasive, and it takes some education, and it has to do with convincing people that are maybe thinking about it to go ahead and do it, and to explain the benefits of the program. So that's That's a big challenge for us, just to go to the next level. To get some more. We have a fair amount of money now. At one time, we were working on a loan, and now we've accumulated money, and we want to use that money in the right places. And, so that's a challenge for us.
Any other thoughts? It sounds like there's a very knowledgeable group here too, so if anybody has thoughts in terms of, as residents, what might be successful or maybe a barrier to preservation, I welcome any input and insight.
One thing that I see as a challenge for us is just the value of housing at the moment. We've got builders everywhere, and they all seem to be focused on building, luxury this, luxury that. And I don't know who's buying these things, but they're selling, and they're selling for lots of money. And that has created more pressure on the township than we've seen for more than a decade. I think in the early teens, part of our success also was that there weren't a lot of developers like trying to buy land up here. So this was a really appealing thing. It was kind of, all right, I can preserve it to get the money now, because there's no developer knocking on my door this year. So we've got that to contend with now. And then, I think we've done, or I think there are more things we can do in terms of outreach. I've personally started trying to visit more places and trying to fit that into all the other things going on has been a challenge. But that's another factor. We've got, I think, more tools we can explore as well. One thing we've kind of talked about, and I think haven't really established a comfort level with, we really depend on the exact deal, would be the idea of, all right, can we buy this land, preserve it ourselves, and then resell it? I know that that's been a successful thing in other townships. West Bradford, one of the Bradfords did that not too long ago. And because we've heard from a lot of people that they really like this program and they want to see it be successful. When we had a developer coming before the zoning hearing board to request a special exception to put in hundreds and hundreds of twins and condos and townhouses. This room was packed with very miffed people. They extended that hearing, I think 3 times. And just person after person came up here, and lots of people found out about it because they had to notify everybody who was nearby. There were lots of people nearby. They told their neighbors. I've never seen this room so full of people. And that was really kind of the genesis of having a lot of people coming to different meetings, like Land Preservation, Planning Commission. It really generated more civic activity or more interest in what's going on at the township level than we've ever seen before, and more activism than we've ever seen before. So people do not want to see this place get developed, and the more we can do to push back against that pressure of development moving in and preserve it, because it's not just preserving the land, it's really preserving the community. Like Mike said, if you've got farms and then housing developments start breaking up that farmland, it gets a lot harder to go borrow your neighbor's manure spreader when your nearest neighbor with a farm is two miles away. One of my mother's best friends was the owner of the last farm in Westchester County, New York. And what Westchester is, Westchester, New York is today. Nobody, she was probably the last person ever to move cattle down the main street in Westchester. So the development will push out the farming once it hits that certain level. In Wawa, Delaware County, that used to be all farms. That was my grandparents. That's gone.
And certainly as more development comes in, your land prices increase too, which is also a barrier. That's what my community and neighboring communities are experiencing. There's less open space, so because there's less open space, the cost of that land, like, we're not seeing $5,000 per acre to preserve a property. It's, I don't know, maybe quadruple that, if not more. So that's, you know, as more development comes in, the cost of that land rises. So that's also something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think the numbers are Beverly Farms more than,
It was like 100,000, I think, or
yeah, the total project cost is 25 million.
something. Yeah.
And they're fighting to preserve 200 acre farm down there. The cost of that township is going to be more than we've spent on this entire lifetime of this program.
And unfortunately, yeah, they just passed an open space referendum, kind of in reaction to that, to be able to preserve that one property, kind of definitely on the later side of when, you know, a lot more land could have been preserved if an open space referendum had been kind of more forward-thinking, like on Hayward Township. So we're definitely ahead of the curve. I heard someone.
Yeah, I think another thing, and Shane kind of pointed on, I think if you look at the farmers in this area, and maybe the reluctancy, I don't know, I'm not telling that they're talking to all the farmers, but maybe the reluctancy of giving up our rights to sell my land or to develop farming and that type of business is tough. It's a tough business. And you're sitting on a lot of money for your land. So what can we do as a community to help the farmers and agriculture to continue that process without falling in with the, well, not just sell off and just take the money? So it's easy, just like Shane said, it's easy to pack the room for the people like us that own half-acre ground and yell and scream about development. We're not the ones that are farming. We're not the ones that are out there with our hands and raising animals and doing what we gotta do. So it's easy for us to complain and say, don't develop. But the people that have these farms, we gotta help them and support them so that they don't want to sell the farm, so they can continue doing it.
A lot of people don't realize the impact of passing a farm from one generation to the next, with the values of the land and the taxes involved in that. It is very challenging. If you're lucky enough to have another generation come along and want to do that hard work, like Sal's saying, sometimes it's just easier to throw your hands up and say, this is worth a lot of money. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, because the taxes are a significant challenge for farmers to pass that on to the next generation when they're looking at very valuable land to sell. So, right.
How can we help the farmers? What can we do to help them to stay doing what they're doing?
One of the cool things about this program is that its existence really literally puts our money where our mouth is on that front side.
Well, I don't want to keep you here all night. I would love to talk preservation all night. Some of the things I did want to discuss, so I have a pack of maps in front of you. I'm sure there are revisions needed to those maps. So if you see any land on these, generally speaking, the green means preserved, and then the darker the shade, the higher the priority for preservation, based on the different criteria. We do have, you mentioned the City of Wilmington fund, so we do have the priority areas for the City of Wilmington funds there. One of the, I guess it's the third to last map, does provide an attempt to provide a snapshot of what has been preserved since 2012, and then since 2018. So the lands protected prior to 2012, then since 2012, then since 2018. If you want to take a look at that, since 2018, the only things that jumped out at me were some land, like HOA lands preserved through the development process. So there may be some properties that we missed through this. And then, you know, we can discuss at what point if we want to put pending preservation. Sometimes we've done that, kind of waiting for that to finalize, or we can just, you know, keep a list of potential preservation just in the back of our heads as we review these maps. And then at the end of the plan process, at those 12 months, if any properties are preserved during that period of time, we'll do an update to the maps to include any of that. So that's just an overview of the maps, and happy to, you know, if any edits come up, anything jumps out at you after the meeting, I can leave my card. Feel free to shoot me an email or call me to let me know of any properties. The only other things, just in terms of, and we kind of touched on some of this when we discussed the challenges, but I want to make sure this plan is helpful for you all, that I sometimes planning documents, you go through the motions, you do all the updates, and then you sit it on a shelf, or it's kind of lost in your email for, you know, the next 5 years until you do an update again. So I want to make sure we develop a plan that is useful, that has tools in it, resources in it, that can help you all with education and outreach, anything like that, figuring out a plan to leverage work being done in other areas of the township, like the BMP work that Lisa does, anything like that. So throughout the process, we can continue to discuss, you know, how we can make this plan as helpful and usable and implementable as possible. But we can maybe put our heads together on that. But that was all I had. If anybody has any questions, happy to answer them. I do have in the packet at the very end of the scope, if you have your magnifying glasses, you can look at this tiny spreadsheet. It's just kind of a general timeline. So we have in the scope that will attend your regular meeting. So if you just have a standing agenda item for us, we'll provide updates, and then we'll come with questions to ask you for input. At your quarterly meetings, you will see a couple optional. If, for instance, there's something that we're not able to address at one of your regularly scheduled meetings, there's the opportunity to add a meeting to discuss, you know, anything for wrapping up, for the purpose of wrapping up the project. But most of it is our work, and we'll be giving you updates on where we stand. I'll be reaching out to you all and working with the township in terms of just getting numbers for creating charts and looking at the leveraging of funds and that sort of thing. So I'll be working with Warren on that. But any questions, happy to answer them, but I also don't want to keep you here all night.
Yeah, the main question I had was if the currently scheduled meetings are going to be enough time for any needed dialogue?
It depends, I think, because it's an update, you've kind of already laid the groundwork in terms of what, and we've done the previous plans, so we have all the information from the previous plans. So I think really what I'll be seeking from you all is the additional items, any kind of brainstorming opportunities for seeing how we can really cater it to the needs of the township now, moving forward, as we've addressed the low-hanging fruit, we're starting to work towards reaching for those higher goals, and how we can strategize around that. Past municipalities, it'll be their first plan, we might need all of the meetings to lay out all of the groundwork, but you all know what you're doing. If you've probably all been here during a land preservation plan update previously, so you kind of know the general process. So I think it's doable within your current schedule, but just wanted to include those just in case anything comes up that needs some additional input. But certainly you know the most about land preservation in Honeybrook, so I think we should be able to get it within the meetings that you have. So the one meeting in January, that's the farmer's breakfast
It is.
instead.
Yeah.
So that one might be,
There's not usually a whole lot of time at that.
Right.
We've got kind of a little bit less than an hour.
right, so that month might be a month that we might have to work around, or maybe come up with another alternative if we can't. If you have a packed agenda, I don't want to take away valuable time from making decisions on preservation. So when we get to January, we can always talk about that.
Okay. And yeah, we can always add in another meeting if we need to. I think there's just rules about how far in advance we have to advertise it.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Other items in the plan, one thing that's come up a couple times, and we did have a section on this in the 2018 plan, when numbers were very different, but the projected cost to complete the program. Okay, we got every one of our priorities. What would that number look like?
So with all the remaining acres for potential preservation, how much funds would you need at, I guess, current per acre costs to preserve every farm?
Yep.
Yep.
You know, still, all the math that was done was in 2018 numbers, which
Right.
changed significantly.
Right. And yeah, I don't know if it's really hard to project because, I mean, costs just
It's,
continue to rise. So I wonder if we do kind of a low estimate and then on a higher estimate, kind of more of a range to try to capture some of that just changing in costs. Because I don't see values going down in terms of price per acre. So we could always talk about, what might be that low range. Maybe that's where we're at right now, and then kind of similar to what you did with your motion earlier, kind of doing that range per acre. But yeah, certainly we can update those.
So your timeline, you said you're talking about 12 months. So for a final product, are you looking at like May 1st of next year, June 1st?
Yeah, that would be what we would shoot for. I think one of the optional, so we do have like a month 13 on this schedule, just, for that final, sometimes it takes a little longer for accepting or something comes up. But yeah, it would be having a final report by that time frame, ready for board review. And I'm assuming the board typically approves these plans or accepts them versus approve them. It's a slightly different process. But typically a plan like this, unless you're using it as an amendment to your comprehensive plan, would be accepted by the board. Which I don't believe you need a public hearing for. The board can just accept it at a regularly scheduled meeting. And at any point, if in the past, if you want to use one of those optional land preservation committee meetings, and I can come present a status update to the board if they're interested in that, that is always an option as well. Any other questions? Great.
That's it.
Well, thank you for the time
No, thank you again.
and your insights. It was already very helpful.
Thank you for journeying up here.
It was a lovely drive.
Old business, well, what is on the agenda there that got bumped off somehow was the transfer of $800,000 back to the land preservation fund from the Parks and Recreation Fund. So we kind of gave them a more or less extended loan. And that is, my understanding is that is supposed to, transfer is supposed to occur once the grant, the news after is finalized. To make sure that council can secure that money. I've been assured that it is coming back. I've not heard anything about interest or anything like that. As far as I know, it's just $800,000 transferring back over. So we continue to monitor that and keep a close eye on it. And we'll keep you all updated as we find things out. Open forum on any other matter. We kind of have a pretty open meeting in general, so I appreciate everybody's participation. But if anybody has anything else they want to share, ask, now's your moment. Thank you very much. The next meeting will be August 20th, 2024, which will be Tuesday, 7 p.m. right here. After that, October 15th, 2024, Tuesday, 7 p.m. And then after that, January 21st, 2025, we'll have a 8 a.m. meeting right here at the Township Building, followed by the Farmers Breakfast at 9 o'clock, which is our biggest outreach event of the year. We try to invite all of the people who own our highest priority farms. We invite people who've already joined the program. We try to have some kind of additional value-added content for everybody. This past year, we had founders of the Oxford Growers Auction come up here and talk about their process of starting up a growers auction for selling produce down in the Oxford area. And at the moment, farmers from up here have to go down to Oxford to go out to Leola. It's a bit of a journey, so we're kind of started the process of we do that here. So,
A nice note on the education part of when you hurt land. I wonder, and I'm not aware of any, and maybe the farmer's breakfast that could be bled in, but anyway, are we educating, or can we educate potential landowners of that process and how they can, I don't want to say avoid taxes, but work that in the best possible way that they can to alleviate a tax hit to that next generation? Yep. And that may be something that people don't think about until it happens, and then you're forced. So would it hurt to put that as part of that land preservation education to help people with that?
Several years ago, we had a speaker at a farmer's breakfast, I forgot the man's name. He did a state plan for the farmers. And that's what he does.
Yep.
He's from Lancaster County, and I'm sorry, I don't have his name, but I think that would be beneficial to bring him or someone similar to him back. There's periodically generational change or other change in the land ownership.
I mean, it may not solve everything, but if it's one person or two people, and you just gain maybe 50 acres or another 100 acres,
Yeah, I think it's been at least 10 years since we've done that, so that might be a good one to bring back.
Do we know what percentage of the farmers or larger landowners in the township are part of that 319?
I know everybody who's preserved has to be part of Act 319, Act 319 is a Chester County program that gives
No,
you.
it's a state program.
Oh, it's a state program, Anyway, I applied to the county. At any rate, it will lower your property taxes in exchange for keeping your land open. And then if you do develop that land, you need to pay back like 7 years of your back taxes. So that's a great program. It also helps a lot of farmers.
And it's good for the farmer and for the farmers.
Yep.
And it's open
It's
to
fine.
anybody that owns more than 10 acres
Yep.
of farm versus.
Yep.
And it can significantly lower any development property
You were talking about doing something with the farmers, I don't know, one of our big expenses is school taxes. That's a big one, it's a lot of money. You know, if we have a nice farm, nice set of buildings. Our taxes spring and fall will be about approximately $1,000 a month. Which is, it's part of life, I guess, but I have a son that's 20 years old, he built the farm. He wants the farm in a year or two or whatever. We have a dairy farm, cows, milk cows. This farmland preservation program has kind of been geared to that. We preserve the whole farm, well, except for a couple acres. But there's more and more people heading into produce now. So now we have an 80-acre farm that's preserved. We can probably put up one house. It's something that we don't know what the future holds. But there's some people that now would kind of like to see if they could do it over, they would probably preserve the farm or maybe place from a house, 2 or 3 houses instead of one. And you get into more development. So that kind of looks at the dairy business right now is not very strong. Milking cows, it's a lot of work. And for my son to take over milking cows, he wants to, but I'm just kind of, something's got to change. Our costs have risen the last couple of years. Everything is just, every time I buy something, it hardly matters what it is, it's more expensive than it was half a year ago and a year ago. And our milk prices actually dropped versus 2 years ago, dramatically. So it's, how can you, because I shouldn't, this is a farmland preservation meeting, I guess, but how can you get the next generation in there if they could work off the farm for $25 an hour? Enough said.
That's a reality. I mean, so whether that's needs to be taken at the state level, federal level, there are the forces that you're facing, that there's a problem.
Well, that brings us up to adjournment. Get out of here just before 9. Motion to adjourn. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. And thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Appreciate you being here.
I have another copy. Done with it if anybody wants